All right, this is Ken Shropshire. I'm here with Bill Rhoden, my colleague, and this is Old Heads New Thoughts. We're going to zero in on the women and the NCAA Final Four. They are officially the Final Four. And in some ways, Bill, the exciting end of the Final Four has happened with women. You're down in Dallas. What kind of opening thoughts do you have about the games?
Well, I must tell you, man, again, speaking of our theme of being old heads, new thoughts. And I don't know how you feel. I was really crestfallen on Friday when South Carolina lost. And I was trying to disguise it because, you had all these, a sea of
crestfallen. I mean, that was, I don't mean to interrupt, but that was, I had to catch myself because I did do, it reminded me of, and we have not talked about this at all. It really did remind me of the UNLV Duke kind of moment in that kind of way. So, as a precursor to where we're headed. But that really did, not because of the style of play, but because of what was on the floor and the outcome.
Clearly, man, out there. And I just to show you my brainwashing. By the way, have you finished Uncle Tom's Cabin yet? I'm about to make
I'm almost there. I'm being very careful today. Make sure I'm not chapter 57.
Well, me, but I'm always, and speaking of the UNLV thing, I felt back when UNLV crushed Duke by 30 points, that was one of the best times of my writing basketball career, because all during that week, Duke had been cast as, the choir boys and the preppies and all that. And UNLV, which had a great team, had been cast, as these thugs and guys
street
didn't
basketball.
Go to class. But I mean, just all the worst stereotypes you could ever see. And it was open. And man, when Duke got crushed like that by 30 points, I wish they would have lost by 80 points. That was one of the best routes I ever saw. Conversely, a year later, when Duke added Grant Hill, and I know the Hill family and all that, I was a little. It softened the blow a little bit.
You were a little less caught up in your post civil rights kind of mode, and you let it go.
A little bit.
This is we talked about this. This was coming from the generation of, it's a black person on TV. Right. The idea of rooting for the team with a black quarterback, the most black players. I'll say, maybe wrongly so, but that so much reminded me of what wasn't being said so overtly about Iowa. And certainly it all played out in the final game.
And you're right, man. We're on the same page like that. And sometimes what I was saying to Uncle Tom reference, I feel when I start feeling like that, I feel I'm trying to disguise how I feel, and clearly when South Carolina and the whole arena, man, you had all these Iowa Hawkeyes, and there were a couple black fans there, but it was this overwhelming thing, and it was so stark. You had a starting five with 5 white players, and then of course South Carolina had a number of sisters up and down the lineup, and coached by Dawn Staley. So there was so much riding on that, and then I looked at who are the refs. So 2 of the 3 refs, these white women, one with a ponytail. So I said, Dawn may be in trouble, And I felt when they lost,
we're gonna start calling this the Rhoden Shropshire racial therapy show, because this, because I would say some of this is not right. Some of this kind of
really not right.
Foundational stuff that we have is not right, but it's the reality of how we think about some of this that and maybe don't always say it out loud in terms of this is the way that people come to these sports. This is old. How long did it take some people to really recognize the greatness of Larry Bird? The whole idea of no, Larry Bird really is that great, and don't worry about right. It is his race. So it's the reality of seeing the moment, seeing the all black team on the floor and the all white team on the floor, and the black coach and the white coach. We are not colorblind, and there is a history leading up to this that that causes some sorts of reactions to come forward. And really, you know, I wasn't verbalizing that at all in the moment, but internally I'm watching it and I'm thinking that. But then when we came to the final game and the interaction between Angel Reese and Caitlin, then you saw it, and then we saw the kind of the Twitter commentary and the commentary by some commentators on various talk shows about the sportsmanship of the Black woman versus the sportsmanship of the white woman doing the same thing, essentially.
Yeah, and I must admit, man, again, this clearly gets into the whole old heads, new thoughts thing. I didn't really know that was the signal, the I can't see you. I didn't know that's what that was. I thought that because they had 3 fingers, I thought that she was just saying, "Oh, I hit a 3-pointer." I mean, I didn't realize that was, you know, like the equivalent of not knowing a gang sign or something. You know, I didn't realize that
you would have known the Crips or Blood side, but you didn't know John Cena, the wrestler, kind of movement. Yeah, no, I didn't either, and got, you know, like everybody else, got caught up on it pretty quickly. But clearly, you know, the ladies knew what was going on
because she's been doing it, and I didn't realize. Now that I do, that's what I said. Wait a minute, I haven't seen her do that. Like, you know, she was doing that all day Friday when I mean, she was always doing that. So I said, oh, I see. So she was talking trash constantly, you know, about that. And again, Ken, when you score 41 points, you do have the right to
you can do that. Whatever, and that's where I am. That's where I am with it too. So I want to, you know, let's lay out our kind of internal feelings about the compositions of the teams and how wrong that is, and we shouldn't be like that. And you know, but in fact didn't take any action overtly because of that. But that's what we saw on the floor, especially with South Carolina versus Iowa. And then when these reactions came, though, it really was something to understand how differently the prism through which, you know, we're disclosing our prism that we didn't articulate in the moment. But it's really interesting to see, and we'll see how long the defense, you know, well, Caitlin didn't do it to an individual, she didn't do it as long, and sort of all that stuff. But this goes back, you know, a lot of people talking about Jack Johnson and Ali talking trash, and you know, but this is all part of sports. And also there is this little modicum problematic issue of women doing it at all. You know, the idea that women talk trash too, is that appropriate? And in my view, this is all what happens on the field of play.
That's what made it better. It made it better to me. You know, you're right, man. I'm so glad you picked up on that, because if this was guys, it wouldn't even be an issue. I mean, guys, I mean, they're you know, we're taught to talk trash, and you know, from the time you come out the tunnel, that's part of the whole male bravado. And I think with women, there's still that thing of sexism that you're still supposed to kind of not sweat, you know.
I'll say I was actually, you know, I watched it, and in the moment, I knew she was doing something. I kind of Googled pretty quickly and said, okay, that's what's going on. And when Angel after the game said, I'm gonna misquote her, and I think in your piece you probably have it correctly, but she basically said, I did this for all the little Black girls watching me, that it's okay to be you. It kind of it grabbed me for a moment that you know, we should be able to do the same thing that they do.
Yeah, let me read that, because I think it's important at the press conference, because I think it really blew everybody away. It was so blunt, you know. And
if you can read that.
Yeah, they asked her about it, and she said, all year I was critiqued for who I was. I don't fit the narrative. I don't fit the box that y'all want me to be in. I'm too hood. I'm too ghetto. Y'all told me that all year. Then, you know, she said, in an apparent reference to Clark, she said, when other people do it, y'all don't say nothing. So this is for all the girls that look like me, for those who want to speak up for what they believe in. It's unapologetically you. And man, it was so stunning, because as a journalist, you're like thinking, bingo,
Yeah.
but it was so raw,
It's Ali-esque in
Yeah.
terms of, I know you're going to hate me for saying this, but I'm going to say it.
Right.
It's not at the same ultra level, but I ain't got nothing against no Viet Cong. I mean, it really is saying something that needs to be said in terms of what's going on in the situation. And sometimes, this is why, and this is now turning into the Black radicalism show. This is why you need Malcolm and Martin. I mean, you need somebody to say that nobody wants to hear. And maybe, maybe somebody needs to come in behind and smooth things out. But now it's in the atmosphere. Oh, no. You should not come at me differently than you are coming at the white woman.
Right.
That I am, yes, I don't look like maybe what you would look like, and maybe I don't speak in the same way, but I'm doing the same thing, and I should have the right to do the same thing. I mean, that's really what's at the heart of it. I'm doing the same thing that was done, and I should have the right to do the same thing.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, this is so fascinating the more you speak about it, because it's so funny that they asked Caitlin Clark what she said about it, and it was so ironic. They said, well, what do you think about the gesture? And then she said, I have no idea. I was just trying to get to the handshake line. So ironically, her gesture was, what's the thing mean? I don't see you. I don't see you. That's what that means. So that's what she was saying when they asked her about the thing. She didn't see that either. So you ain't seeing nothing. You just have totally gone blind.
Yeah. You can't see me. So yeah, it is interesting. It was almost a political kind of response, really. It was, I know what your question is, but I'm going to answer the question I want to answer.
Yeah, right.
that was really what that struck me as. It was really, she's very, very good in her commentary with the press. I mean, I've watched some throughout the year, and she is excellent. I mean, the idea that she has all this NIL revenue coming in because of her success on the floor, and also her presence in those kinds of moments. Caitlin is just a phenomenal basketball player. The skill that she displayed, and like everybody else, I haven't seen that many games throughout the year, but these final games, watching her, I'm just amazed. I mean, that's a talent that should not go unrecognized. I mean, she deserves all the awards that she got.
And that's what you were saying, Ken, earlier. And that's the sort of dilemma that, and I was saying, one of my takeaways was how the great white hopeism is also gender neutral, because it's not like we're saying this young lady is not great. I mean, she's great. She's a heck of a player. But the problem I've got is, even when you see it with Christian McCaffrey in the NFL, and with Jokic and what's the kid from Dallas, the Mavericks,
Luka.
Luka, and it's like, whenever there's a white athlete who excels in a sport dominated by Black athletes, it almost becomes more. It becomes, you just can't be great. You got to be George of the Jungle. You got to be something more than that. You just can't be. It's like a line in Gil Scott-Heron's thing when he was saying, you never dig sharing. You always have to have the most. And that was my issue. And you're right, it does take away from how good this young lady is. Yes, you think we're not arguing that you're not a great player. In fact, I'd argue for your right to talk trash. But the problem is, when you talk trash and everybody embraces you, and you're talking, and you're called being confident, and that's the swagger. But yet, when you get it back, when Angel Reese gives it back to you, now all of a sudden you can't take it. Now all of a sudden, Angel Reese. Well, and I'm not saying Caitlin Clark can't take it. I don't think Caitlin Clark gives a damn, to be honest with you, because she's a competitor. She said, "You're right. I gave it out. Now you gave it back. Good move." But it's everybody else. It's the white press. It's the media. It's the fan.
On the floor, I was watching while it was being thrown at her. She did what we do. I mean, either you're going to get in a fist fight or you're going to ignore it. And she did. She's an athlete. She's been through that before. She's like, okay, we're down 20, 30, whatever it was. I need to stay in my lane, leave this alone, and get off the floor and not get into anything. And probably thinking about what she was going to say in the press conference. So I mean, I thought, in terms of her whole role in this, she didn't write the articles. She didn't say, ignore me when I do this kind of stuff. She did what she did. And it's, it is this thing, and you play on teams with white athletes, and you talk to guys, and you go in the locker room and all this sort of stuff. I mean, sure, there's racial stuff here and there, but for the most part, amongst themselves, they get it. And the idea that, okay, I must, first you got to, first LSU has to win the game. And then the idea that you say, okay, now, there wasn't a whole lot of that going on in the beginning. It's like, okay, let's get to the point where we can deliver that too. It's kind of interesting. I'm always thinking about guys doing the end zone dance and that sort of stuff. How much time did you spend thinking about what you were going to do? And how, at what point did the synapse click that, okay, I scored, so now I can do it. So there's some of that going on too, but that also shows how much of an impact Caitlin was having during this whole season. I mean, Angel had played against her, 3 previous times, I guess, while she was at Maryland.
At Maryland,
and beat her too. So they're rivals. So this is probably, even deeper than that. This is, we could go back and look at the films of those games. There might be some interaction going on, but this is what happens in sport. And Angel's whole message is, the law says essentially, you've got to treat people the same if they're similarly situated. So if 2 people, whatever race, gender, are in the same position and they take the same act, you got to treat them the same. Right. And essentially what's been put forth here is, did we treat somebody differently because of who they are? And that does seem to be the case in the public sphere, that there was different treatment. So that's the big issue that Angel brings to light. And that's also the same kind of issue. I keep saying it. And again, people talk about Jack Johnson, kind of this whole line of athletes that have done this kind of stuff. But Ali said these things so many times, so many statements of, from how beautiful he is, and you treat me this way because I'm Black, and the angel food cake is white, and the devil's food cake is Black. I mean, he just highlighted all this stuff that was, comical sometimes, and sometimes it was uncomfortable. But this is one of those uncomfortable moments where just face the reality. Why did you view this differently? You viewed it differently in the same way that I'm sitting in my living room rooting for South Carolina over Iowa. And then granted, I got a kind of a Don Staley Philly connection. Otherwise, I don't care about South Carolina or Iowa.
I know. Like, we're choosing,
caught up in it.
Yeah, we're not choosing, just be clear, we ain't choosing for South Carolina, the state. We're choosing, which or Louisiana.
Wait, you trying to get me to say I'm gonna vote for Tim Scott? Is that what you're trying to get me?
That's somebody said, well, wait a minute, Professor Shropshire, are you gonna vote for Tim Scott? He's Black. He said, that's another show.
That's a different show.
That's a different show.
That's the politics show.
But just, you mentioned Dawn. Dawn had kind of set the table on Friday when, in her post-game soliloquy, she really kind of went in on media who had started this stuff about, my players are not bar fighters, because the LSU coach, and it's so funny, on Sunday, the LSU coach, when asked about this whole thing, was very, because she had made the comment about the bar, the South Carolina players, somebody told her that they were like bar fighters, and Dawn Staley took her to task for that, saying, my players are not bar fighters. And so when they asked the Iowa coach about it on Sunday, she was very much, well, I know that they asked her about Angel Reese. And she said, well, yeah, I know she must have been very happy about her performance. I would have been happy too. People celebrate different ways, so she clearly had everybody was trying to diffuse the freight train that they knew was coming, you know. But it was just a great moment. And at the end of the day, Ken, I think that it was a great 4 days for women's basketball, you know, because that's what you want to see, man. You want to see competition. You want to see some pushing and shoving and, you know, some feistiness and trash talking and not this. Now, women are not supposed to be doing that. You're supposed to be dainty. And I also think that was, I think, the argument for Black women. Why are we seeing, if we're going to have this whole feminine ideal that has white women up here and Black women here, which is an age-old trope, you know, we're seen as, you know, as thugs when you guys are seen as just playing, you know, heady, tough but fair basketball. You know, that whole kind of Midwest thing. So yeah, there was a lot to digest. A writer's dream.
Yeah, I mean, and in the end, again, I'm saying articulate it. You know, if you said what you said,
yeah,
and then claim it. I'm claiming my problem. You know, and I need to move away from it. You know, but here's a for those of you that are saying, well, that's not me. Go back and watch that movie Hoosiers.
Yes. Yeah.
And see who you're rooting for at the very end.
Yeah.
Now, if you got caught up with Gene Hackman and rooting for the white team from Hickory versus the brothers, that's one outcome. The other is these brothers on the opposing team, the opponent, the Washington Generals, haven't been really shown through the whole movie. Then all of a sudden they show up in the final scene. If you find yourself rooting for the Black team over these white guys from Hickory, shame on you, like shame on me. You missed the whole movie, but you fell back into some retro race stuff of rooting for the team just because they're Black. So so Hoosiers is another moment to think about in terms of our popular culture and how we get caught up race-wise. And you know, and at the end of this is we all need to move beyond this. That's what are we striving for? You know, it's I'm not going to equate this with some of those ailments that people deal with, but the first step is to admit, you know, colorblindness is not with us yet, and we do have these kind of visceral first reactions to things that we need to regroup on, and we need to, for those who are not going to forgive you and I for pulling for South Carolina for no apparent reason, but we need to, you know, forgive people to step forward and say, well, that's why I did it, and have some exchanges about why you are caught up racially the way that you're caught up, and try to move forward from that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with this moment, if there is some kind of revelation to people about how they may be viewing different athletes on the floor, and how that carries out to the rest of society.
Yeah, well, it does. You know, you mentioned Caitlin Clark and NIL. Angel Reese actually is the #1 NIL person. Her earnings are off the chart in the women's game. I mean, she's like, you know, way off the chart. So this only helps her. You know, and you know, another thing too, we talk about Dawn Staley. I don't know what your thoughts are about Kim Mulkey. I'd never really been around her. I sort of dismissed. I should dismiss is a hard word, but you know, you lump people in. You lump people in to these categories, and you look at things that, you know, when she was at Baylor, you know, demanding that her team go to the White House, the Trump White House, and other stuff she said. I'm thinking, this is Marjorie Taylor Greene. I was working on a piece about transgender athletes in Title IX, and how is Title IX, now this is the 50th anniversary, how will Title IX expand to accommodate transgender athletes, which has become a bitter tug of war. And I asked Mulkey about it, thinking I knew what she was going to say. I mean, you know, because, and she was very, very, accommodating, admitted that, listen, I'm trying to work through this and all that. So I'm just saying that I guess to your point about all of us not necessarily dealing with color but character, is that I think we all just have to kind of give it a break. I mean, that they're all behind this, are all human beings behind all this, and you do have to deal with each person, about kind of who they are. And if we get to a point where we can't agree, then we just kind of move on. Kind of like what Caitlin Clark did in the face of people, talking trash. She said, "You know what? Cool. You talk trash. I hit threes. Let's move on. Let's play ball." So I think it's this whole thing. Like I said, I think it was just fascinating. It was just a fascinating moment. More fascinating than I think the men than the men's tournament has been. And what do you think would have happened had it been South Carolina's Black players versus LSU's Black players? Again, we probably would not be having this discussion.
No, we wouldn't. It'd be more of the same in some ways. I mean, it's the team, the Iowa team looks a lot like the beginning, the kind of early Old Dominion, kind of the early days of women's basketball, and when success and great players were just starting to emerge. And so it was an interesting throwback to see a team like that. But yeah, if we had two Black teams, then there would be, very little discussion on this vein at all. So I think it's valuable. I mean, I think it's really kind of interesting how this has evolved, and how the women's game. I mean, as we close out, I think it's really exciting that this happens on this weekend, and not the way we thought it would. I mean, we thought the elevation of the women's game was happening. We thought, South Carolina gets crowned and everybody lives happily ever after. But this kind of interaction, this Iowa, who we presume will be back, and LSU, who we presume will be back, this is some more excitement to a game that many had not paid attention to.
Yeah, no, I love it. I said, thank you so much. Thank you, Jesus, to Caitlin Clark, and thank you, Jesus, to Angel Reese.
Right. Angel Reese, who was not the star of the game, by the way, we didn't get into that, was not the star of the game for LSU, but that's again, that's X's and O's. What do you call a basketball podcast? Not X's and O's. Do they do X's and O's on the basketball floor? I don't think so. What do they do?
No, they do X's and O's, but we know what you mean, Ken.
Yeah, okay, all right. Bill, we got to close this out. I think we avoided Uncle Tomism. We may have even got some Malcolm X points today. I don't know.
Oh, brother, yeah. Just tell me when you finish the book, man. That's all I want to know. I think I'll start reading the audio version.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, Bill. All right, take care.